Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the second episode of the Gadfly with your hosts, David Rich and Brainerd the Raven. Hello, Brainerd. Right. We have on our the show tonight a very special guest, someone who was on my radio show before and drew a remarkably large crowd thereof. Lilith, Calista, Silverkrow. Lilith, how are you?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming on. We had such a great response to the radio show you were on. This kind of stuff, modern day paganism, witchcraft, this is all up and coming and new age stuff, psychic mediumship, NLP, all this stuff. This is becoming more and more popular as time goes on. And it's there are a lot of theories and explanations as to why. Some people think it's like actually the earth is like pushing us towards a more earth-based religion because we're screwing it up so bad it needs its like spiritual connection back. And I like that theory the best. Some people think that it's just because we're tired of the Bible-based religions, and that's fine too. Anyway, why don't we start the interview? Why don't you tell us about how you started in your earlier years? When did you first discover or had like an inclination towards these sorts of things?
Spirituality in general, or just like healing people? Like what?
Let's go with spirituality in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you had a certain religious upbringing, right?
Yeah, so I actually grew up with Jehovah's Witnesses and Christians, and not to say that there's anything wrong with Christians or Jehovah's Witnesses, it's just they didn't have the answers, and I started questioning so many things about the Bible and the stories that I've been hearing. I went to church every Sunday. I, went to Kingdom Hall and things like that, and I just wasn't getting the answers. And I remember when I was about 13 years old, I had this like awakening, so to speak, where I had this intense dream where I was going up this spiral staircase, and at the end of it was the goddess Isis. And
no way.
And I remember the very next day, it was like 8th grade, I went to school, and I had never even heard of Isis or anything like that. And I went to school, and we ended up talking about Egyptian mythology, and bam, there she was in our books. And so that started a spiral for me.
See, folks, real quick, if you don't mind me stopping right here, that is like a full-blown sign. When something like that happens to you, please pay attention. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Don't you think? Because I think that like people, I think that happens to people are like, well, that's a weird coincidence, and they just sort of go about their way. No,
it was not a coincidence to me. And there was a lot of really weird signs that would happen around me. So not only me going to school that day, I remember my mother getting in this apartment on the 3rd floor in the north side of Chicago. And I remember as I'm walking through the door for the first time, I'm looking on the side of the door, like the frame of the door, and someone had drawn a pentagram there on the side of the door. And it was just the craziest thing. Like, I just remember
it's another one. It's another one.
It was another sign. I just kept getting signs.
Yeah, exactly.
Smacking me in the face.
Hello.
And
wonderful.
I just remembered like my very first journey into spirituality was witchcraft, traditional witchcraft. And I just remember, there was a store that opened up in Chicago or whatever. I would leave it out of here, but I went there. I was really young. I walked in with $20 in my pocket. I literally picked up a book. I didn't look at what the book was. I threw $20 down and I ran out. I was like, here you go, to keep the change. And I didn't even know what the book was until I got home. And the very first book I had ever read about witchcraft was True Magic by Amber Kay.
Okay. And here we are.
And here we are.
So you got the book, you read it like real quick, we have Samira Hussein. She's chiming in here. Spirituality is good. Worshipping goddesses. I know spells. She's Wiccan. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Hello. Thank you to this. Welcome to the show, Samira. So when you read the book, what did you do? Did you first cast a spell? Did you just kind of light some candles? What did you do?
I remember reading the book from back to front to back, and just kind of like absorbing the information. I have this thing where if I see something, I need to absorb it. So that means I need to really sit with it for a while. And after I had really, really understood it, I did a dedication ceremony, and I gave myself to the goddess, because obviously she was not going to leave me alone at this point. So I went with it. And later on in high school, I was given a book by one of my favorite high school teachers. She gave me The Mist of Avalon, and it was like it's a beautiful book. And I
Oh,
remember reading that book and being submerged in it, and I could feel like my past lives were a part of that book. And it was just, it, it gave me so much strength to go through all the different things I was going through in my life. And, I ended eventually joined a coven.
oh, you
I
did.
got, yeah, yeah. And I got initiated as high priestess. And it was just this whole entire thing that happened throughout my life. And spirituality has been a huge part of it. First, it was strictly witchcraft, and then later on, as I grew, I found that there was so much more. So there was, tarot. There was astrology. I'm not really good at astrology, so don't ask me any
Neither am I.
astrology
We talked
questions.
about that. You talked about
Yeah.
that before, and the guest I had on last week, the psychic medium paranormal investigator, she's into tarot and all that stuff, and we're both like, no, astrology is really, it's lost on us. I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. And it takes a certain kind of person to
Right.
really, really
To
understand
really cast a
astrology.
chart and that kind of thing, sure.
Right. And that's not my thing. But, there's just all these different
Mhm.
modalities of spirituality that opened up to me. And then later on, I was introduced to like archangel spirituality, doing Reiki. I had my own metaphysical shop later on when I lived in
Nice.
Oregon. Right.
What was it called?
And it was called New Pagan Journeys. And
Where was it? Was it in Portland?
It was in Tigard.
Oh, I never got out there. Okay.
Yeah, it was in Tigard, Oregon. And it was the most amazing community. I taught a bunch of witches there. I have one of those witches here who's like staying with me for a short period of time. She's actually moved here to Ohio, one of those wonderful witches that I trained. And
Oh, wow.
right now I'm teaching psychic development, um, like a private class for psychic development. I have a few students in there, and it's amazing.
That's very cool. And I want to get back into that. Like, how do you teach psychic abilities? Because we have a lot to talk about concerning psychic abilities. So Samira has some spell books that she can give away. She can tell the future. Telepathy is her specialty in mind control. Oh, okay, that's pretty powerful.
That's pretty good.
That's not bad. So first of all, I want to ask you about being in a coven.
Mhm.
What is that? What is it like? Because I know you like you see like for the solitary practitioner, and you see for like the person participating in a coven. What does it mean to be in a coven?
It's a vow. It's really like a family, and it's really like a very close knit family. And the way that we practice is we practice through all the Esbats and Sabbats. So, all the pagan holidays, all the full moon, all the new moon rituals. And that's really when we met, we celebrated. And it's really about that togetherness and then creating lives for each other, because a lot of us come from different backgrounds, and maybe we all want something that's pretty similar, and when we all put that energy towards what it is that we want, it's unstoppable. The universe
Right.
can't
Oh,
say no. The universe just can't say no, because magic is that powerful, depending on how powerful your inner strength and your inner will is. And
sure.
it's one of the reasons why I totally I know this is like far-fetched, but like I totally believe in NLP, because it changes your mindset enough where the universe won't reject and your subconscious won't reject the things that you put out into the universe. So it kind of makes you even more powerful to be in that place.
Oh, I know. I'm really interested in looking into an NLP certification program for sure. That and hypnotherapy. I'm going to have the same list as you do by probably the middle of next year, except for the high priestess thing, because I can't do that.
Well, you could be a priest. You don't have to
I
be
could
a
be a priest.
priestess.
Well, exactly. Okay, cool. So the coven was a positive experience.
Yeah, it was definitely a positive experience. It was very uplifting for me because I was a very troubled teen and went through a lot of traumas in my life. And to have that group of people to really support me, really, it really took me to a new level, because from being this troubled teen, poor, being kicked out of my family, for being gay and also being, pagan in spirituality, there was things I had to keep to myself. I've lived on the streets. I've done all sorts of things,
Yeah.
and just to have some sort of family to connect with when I needed it was the most important thing of my life. And I don't think that I would be where I am now if I didn't have that wonderful connection of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you still in one? You put on your list as high priestess. Is that
I do
still
practice,
an
but
active?
I'm still a high priestess. I mean, once a high priestess, always a high priestess, obviously. I still practice traditional witchcraft. I just don't currently have a coven. that'll be probably sometime next year when I've really settled. And I do believe that I'll be teaching witchcraft classes next year, to really get some priests and priestesses out there. There's so many classes I want to teach. I don't even know what to do first, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear you 100%. Okay, let's move forward real quick. I want to talk about psychic abilities. I want to talk about like the difference between like what we categorically can typically count as like a new age sort of thing, what would typically count as witchcraft. You and I talked about that a bit about that before. But what did you draw the distinction between? Because like I don't think people would necessarily associate psychic abilities with witchcraft. Witchcraft, I think, to most people means like casting spells.
Not necessarily. It depends, because witchcraft is a practice. Like being Wiccan is a religion, like we talked about before. That's completely different. So like Wicca is a religion, but not all witches are Wiccan, right? So, So when you talk about psychic abilities, first and foremost, everybody has the potential to have psychic abilities. It's not as though only a select few are able to have psychic abilities, because that's not true. I can teach anybody who's willing to learn to use their senses, because basically all psychic ability is a heightening of your senses. That's really all it is. So
that's interesting, because the lady last week, Kristen Marie, who is again she's a psychic out here, psychic medium, paranormal investigator. And I told her, and I told you before, I read tarot cards. I've been reading tarot cards for decades. I've studied tarot cards. I've been reading them for a long time. I know tarot cards very well, and I'm really good at reading them. But I always make sure I tell the person I am not claiming to be a psychic. This is me, because I don't feel personally comfortable with the word, because I don't see myself as a psychic. And according to yourself, other people, and the lady from last week, like a psychic just means like really an in-tuned intuition, if you will. Okay, like it's just like you can just read, which everybody has intuition, and I get that. But I guess it's the predicting the future part that is what gives me personally pause in referring to myself as psychic. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I want you to understand, and I want whoever's paying attention to understand, is that psychics don't necessarily have to predict the future. They predict the energies around the future, which is much different. So
beautifully said, actually. But yeah.
Right. So it's the energies around the future. What I teach my students is that basically, when you're reading for a person, they want to know something about a relationship. What's happening is you're actually reading the energy of the relationship itself. And what happens is that whatever that person that you're reading for, whatever energy they're holding, you get to bring that out of them. So whatever's innately within that person, they already know the answer. Our job is to bring it out of them. And so that's what psychic ability is all about, being heightened in those senses. Now, I wanna like bring something into, because I'm going to mention NLP a bunch of times tonight, just because it really helps me to teach my students what exactly psychic ability is. And the reason why is the one thing that I teach that is NLP based, but also works for psychic ability is rapport. And we say that rapport is about 55% physiology, which is your body language. And then we have little words at like 7%. And then there's tonality, which is whatever the percentage in between is. So that's like 30 something percent, right?
Okay.
And so there have been studies and proof that rapport can actually bring you closer to a person's energy and connect you with the person so well that you're able to tell more about them, what they're feeling, what they're sensing, what they're seeing, because your senses are then heightened because you're connecting to that person, like equals like. So that is one thing that I have brought into my psychic class, because I thought it was really important that people understand the object of rapport and why it works. And then the object of, or the idea of tapping into someone else's energy so that they understand what those energy centers feel like. So there is a huge difference between just calling. I want to say that there's not a huge difference actually in calling yourself an intuitive or a psychic. I think it's just the connotation in which people see it, the representation of what a psychic is. They think of like a crystal ball or like something crazy like that when they think of psychics. They were like, oh, psychics are hacks or whatever. Like they have this idea, and it's usually based on what they've seen, like movies, or maybe they walked across like a psychic shop and it's dark lit room and the woman's all, you know, mysterious. Or I even had a student tell me, because I have them do shadow work, which is just work around like their insecurities and the things that they need to bring out. As they're learning, they're also doing shadow work. And I had a student tell me actually that when she thought about psychic mediumship, when she thought about being psychic, she automatically thought of ghosts.
Interesting. Well, mediumship, yeah, sure, okay.
Right. When she thought of psychic mediumship, she immediately thought of ghosts, that what she was going to hear was going to, or see, was going to be just like that movie where like Patrick Swayze like shows up and like, you know, Whoopi Goldberg's like, "You in trouble, girl," and he says
still in his earth clothes and everything, yeah.
Right. Like, you know, as like, you know, playing Unchained Melody in the background.
Wouldn't that be nice? I would love that. Wouldn't that be awesome?
It's crazy. But that's exactly what she had a vision of before actually going through the psychic training. She realized that it really was just a heightening of each of her innate senses at that point.
Okay.
Right. And so we work through every single clair, and then we talk about all the different aspects of how to reach certain energies and how to read them and your body's responses and how to connect with a person. We do everything based on ecology as well. So
tricky and sometimes trying to.
Sorry.
Oh. We do everything.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We do everything based on ecology, and ecology is basically what's good for yourself, what's good for the planet, what's good for the person, right? So it's basically a code of ethics on how you should treat people. So if someone's asking for something that might be damaging to them, think about the ecology behind it before you answer that question. So, because it doesn't matter if you, let's say you walk into the presence of someone and you believe that they're sick. I mean, that shouldn't be the first thing out of your mouth. You know, hey, I think you're sick or something. You know what I'm saying? They shouldn't be that. And so there is some protocol on what you can and cannot say, and how you express those emotions and feelings.
Would you tell somebody that you're getting a serious sick vibe from them? Like, even if it's not the first thing you say, would you say it eventually? Something like politely and civilly, gently?
Well, it depends. If that person is coming to me for a health reading, I would probably tap into each of their organs, or like tap into like, you know, parts of their body that they might be having troubles with. I have a friend who actually does emotion body code, and we know that emotions get trapped in the body. And so sometimes we can read the energies that are trapped inside the body. See, I'm not a medical medium, but like if I tap into your energy and I feel like my back is hurting, most likely I know that your back is hurting. And I might ask you about it. How's your back doing? You know, I might ask that because I'm feeling that pressure and tension in my back or my shoulders. I might ask you about it. Because I'm primarily clairsentient, so I feel things. Yeah, I feel things.
Is it ever overwhelming?
It can be, like getting.
You ever like just shut up? I'm trying to, you know, watch TV.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we learn how to shield and protect our energy. I mean, I already knew how to do that as a witch, you know. So just all I had to do was just transfer the knowledge over, which really isn't that different.
No, not at all. Not at all. Let's talk more about the medium thing. I asked my guest last week, because that seems to be your primary thing, was mediumship. She does a lot of connection with people's personal attachments to the deceased. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, and I want to ask you, because you claim to be a witch, and she specifically said that she's not a witch. She doesn't. So that's just not her thing. She's a psychic medium, and that's what she does. Okay.
Right.
No big deal. She's like, I just don't cast spells. That's why I referred to it earlier as people think of it as casting spells. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I asked her, I'm like, do you deal with any other things on the other side, if you will, than just deceased people? Do you deal with like archetypal, like angels and even like demons and like what are gods and goddesses and stuff like that? Now in witchcraft, you deal a lot with those sorts of things. Do you particularly? You said that your first experience in this was Isis. That's pretty damn intense.
She just talks to me. Yeah,
she's the real deal. She's the real. I have a connection with her too. She's awesome. Not that blatant, but So why don't you talk about some of the differences between like dealing with like a god, goddess, an archetype of some sort, a masculine energy form, a feminine energy form versus somebody who actually physically existed and is dead, and you're dealing with them.
I noticed that the energy signatures feel a lot different because I do connect with angels. I really love connecting with angels. I have, the 4 primary archangels and then Archangel Metatron. So you have Archangel Raphael, Archangel Uriel, Raphael, and Archangel Michael on my side at all times. I actually have some, I wish I could show it to you, but I have some posters that kind of call them into my space to protect it. And they're always there with me. If I call on them personally, I can hear them. And I think what people don't understand about like actually physically hearing like a spirit, sometimes it sounds like you're in a voice, but that's not exactly what it is. It's just, it can be loud, it can be external, and that does happen. But for a lot of people, it tends to be an internal either knowing or feeling, and a feeling which turns into a vibration that they can translate. Or it might be a ringing in the ear or something like that, which they can ask to slow down and actually get that message. Or it might be some people who have like visual visions of them in the room. And they might be holding a sign, or they might have a flash in their mind, because there's inner and outer clairvoyance as well. So they might have a flash in their mind of seeing this angel and say there's an angel present with you, or a goddess present with you. I know when I'm communicating with angels because they have a very light and funny sense of humor sometimes, and they're not always direct in their answers. They like to do riddles, and they're very metaphorical sometimes. I find it's especially Archangel Metatron seems to be very metaphorical. I don't know if it's just because that is my representation of Archangel Metatron, but I do realize that everybody has their own representation because angels are omnipresent. They're everywhere at all times. Same things with gods and goddesses, right?
Yeah.
Gods and goddesses have a very unique energy signature. And I always know if the goddess is speaking to me because I'll see the symbols, or I'll get flashes of the symbols in my mind. I will feel like kind of comforted and warm around me, depending on the god or the goddess who's around me. As for like spirit guides, which is something completely different, they're always with me. So I know who's speaking. Either there's a few different ways. I don't know if you've heard of like Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. She described in her book, I believe it's Asking and It's Given. It's one of those books. It's either the Vortex or one of those. She starts talking about how when she started trying to get messages from Abraham, her whole entire like head would like spell letters in meditation. And so that's one of the ways that I know that I'm being communicated with, sometimes by my spirit guides. So sometimes my whole body will start to spell letters. Like I would feel my head moving like as if it's writing. And sometimes if I can't hear, if I'm blocked, like a chakra's blocked or something, and I can't really hear what's going on, or I can't see, my whole body will actually adapt to the right like handwriting of the person or the spirit that I'm speaking with. So sometimes I'll get like, for a while I had my mom around, and my mom passed away in 2017. And I recognized her handwriting because nobody writes P's like she does. I asked who it was, and she spelled out her name with that crazy P. And I was like, whoa, I've never seen anyone have that P. I knew it was my mom. So there's signs like that. Like maybe I don't hear her, but maybe I feel her presence, and maybe my head will spell something specific or something like that because she has a hard time communicating from the other side. So that energy is much heavier. I feel it kind of way down my body, but it's not a scary feeling. It just feels like kind of like almost like a wave or energy moving through me.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. Okay, very cool. I like that. I like that imagery. That's very cool. So, I mean, do you find yourself when you're doing mediumship for a client, a friend, I guess, how do you go about contacting one of their long lost loved ones or something? Like, what's the process of doing that? Do you bust out a Ouija board? Do you have a seance? I'm just kidding.
No, actually, don't bust out a Ouija board. I don't mind doing that.
Oh, I love Ouija board. I just saw one randomly. I saw one online the other day. I'm like, I need to get one of these. These seems so cool.
Yeah, I don't mind using a Ouija board at all, but
they're very effective. Yeah.
When you're in the middle of a reading, you tend not to want to do that. Like, so for me, I tend to, especially when I teach my students how to do it, one thing that people don't understand is that when we start connecting with the other side, we're going to have our own representations. Like, not everything's going to be 100% accurate, but we might get a sense of how they feel or what they look like, or maybe a saying they used to say all the time, or maybe some words of advice that only that person would know. We will get a clue. So when I contact that other person, that person has to have, I believe, that person has to have a huge connection to the person who's on the other side. So if someone's grieving, it's way easier for me to pick up that energy than someone that died like 30 years ago and you don't really have that much connection with them, because we don't know if they've already passed, on to the other place where we can't reach them, but their energy will be somewhere around. So sometimes I'll say, can you bring something in the room with you that reminds you of them, or a picture of them or something like that? And I just kind of close down and I open up my chakras and I open up my auric field. I ask the energy to move through me. Sometimes I'll ask my spirit guides to help me find that particular spirit if need be. Sometimes I'll pull cards to find out how I can contact them just to help me. Because it's not as easy as, oh yeah, your mom's in the room. Like, sometimes it is. Sometimes you'll sit down with someone, and I had a client recently, like I sat down with her and all of a sudden her spirit guides were there. I was like, oh, those are not my spirit guides. I can tell the difference. Whoa, That's
cool. That's cool.
And she never gave me her real name. And I called her by her real name, and she was like, whoa, how do you even know my name? No one calls me that. She goes by her nickname. Like, I go by my nickname. So
yeah, you just texted me your real name. I won't say it, but yeah.
No, okay.
I don't even think I remember. Erica?
Yes.
Okay.
I never go by that though. That's on government.
You're Lilith.
Board certification.
Yeah, you're Lilith to me. So that's
I've
all.
always been Lilith. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I did when I first was introduced to you through our mutual friends Andy and Amanda. I don't think I thought for a moment that your birth certificate it said Lilith Silverkrow. But but I like it. Okay, very cool. And because I know that one thing too, I think it's important to discuss when you're involved in these sorts of things and you're reaching out to the public to help them with these sorts of tools, these methods, is to a lot of skeptics and naysayers out there want to attack you on any little detail that you might not get right, let's say. This is something I brought up with the lady last week as well. And it's not a matter of have you ever been wrong as much as have you ever had a client that you suspected or explicitly knew at some point? Was there just a get you?
So people will test you, and that's normal. I mean, I've had people will test you. So there's a couple of different ideas that I have. So the first one is that if a person is testing you before you even get to read for them, they're probably not the client you want to talk to. Right. And if you're psychic, you're going to know that they're testing you, right? And
you can tell.
Right, you can tell. There's a lot of body clues and things like that. And I pay attention to find out whether that person's intentions are pure, obviously. There's going to be a lot of people who will agree with you no matter what you say. So I'm very careful about what I do. I'm serious. There's people.
No, I know. I'm glad that you brought up ethics earlier, because that's a huge part of this. Some people would post. I mean, people do that with priests, Catholic priests or ministers or whomever. They just trust them so blindly that anything they say, they're like, okay, hey, sign over your mortgage to me. Oh, okay, here you go. God wills it. Oh, okay, here you go. So crap like that. So that's what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I tell all of my students immediately, if it's your opinion, state, this is my opinion as who I am. This is not what I'm getting psychically. This is my opinion. And separate your opinion from your psychic information, because you don't want someone walking away saying, that guy's bad for you, and that was really your opinion and not like the psychic information that you were supposed to pick up. Because what you're doing is you're influencing a person in a negative way, and that's not what we're here to do. We're here to heal. We're here to help people.
Right. You say something like that, and like the person you're referring to is her husband, and you just destroyed a marriage and a family over a mere opinion. That's not cool. There's nothing cool about that.
But there's a lot of readers like that. That will willy-nilly just be like, yeah, this guy's your twin flame, and this guy loves you, and this guy does this and that and the other. And this person walks away and says yes, and then they become obsessed, and then they want to have this relationship so bad, and they've just been given the worst information possible because the cards may have been misinterpreted. Maybe they will have a relationship later on, but just because you get the Lover's card doesn't mean that that's a twin flame relationship, or it doesn't mean that that's your lifetime partner. That's not necessarily what the Lover's card is all about. And I've seen a lot of readers do things like that. And it just kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because there's a lot of people who truly believe that whatever comes out of your mouth when you flip a card, or even psychically, that's what they believe to be true. So there's different types of readers too.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the Lover's card can be like, even archetypally, like I've had mere one night of a Lover's card, if you will. Mm-hmm. Okay, just pure unadulterated fun times. But it was like it would still count as two people meeting and engaging and just finding super, amazing amount of depth in one another, and they experience each other for an evening. That still counts as a lover card to me. Just because I didn't marry the person or even ever see them again after that doesn't mean it wasn't a Lover's card experience, because it very much was.
It could just be that
I'm not trying to be flippant and saying like one night stands are like, that like that. I was saying you can have a very meaningful night of passion, and I think that would count as a Lover's card experience personally.
Right. And it could just be that person is equally balanced in your life. There's good, masculine and feminine energy. It's a healthy relationship between you, whether it's a friendship or a lover, whatever the relationship is. It could. A
Lover's card could apply to a friendship. It could be two family members. It doesn't have to be sexual, that kind of thing.
Right.
For sure. Okay, very cool. So why don't we talk about, let me get some of your information up here. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about this real quick, Love, Nature, and Beyond.
Love, Nature, and Beyond is my baby. I am the founder, the CEO, the head boss in charge. And basically it was born I came out of this like really crappy relationship of like 4 years. And I was basically with a narcissist. And when you say, when you're in it, you don't see it. And it took me convincing myself over and over again and like really paying attention to find out where it was. And it just was a really bad thing. And when I got out of that relationship, I also afterwards lost my job. I was like actually a manager for a store, and I actually lost my job because of COVID.
It's the Tower card. That was the Tower card right there. That's your whole life just crumbled. Yeah,
my whole life crumbled underneath me. Because it wasn't on a steady foundation, right? It wasn't a steady foundation. I was the saboteur. I was sabotaging my own life and not doing the things that were a part of my true identity. So my whole thing was I did work on myself. I did all the things that I knew about doing shadow work, spiritual work. I coached myself. I began to start myself a new business because I had already been versed in running a business. And I said, I'm never going to work for another person again unless they're my client. I want to help and I want to heal people. And I said, what will be the name of this beautiful marriage of like love and healing? And it became Love, Nature, and Beyond, because love is universal. And it was one of my mottos. If it's not love, I don't want it, was one of my mottos. And nature is all about like that grounding energy of being connected to yourself, and then beyond being like, literally the stars, the sky's the limit. So love, Nature, and Beyond was born just out of learning who I was and my authentic self. I mean, not to say that we're not done here trying to make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be, but I don't think any of us are ever done healing. So, No, not at all. None of us are ever done healing.
You would have to be in like a state of perfection. No, you're not. In this incarnation, you're never in a state. You're always in flux. You're always changing.
Right.
Yeah, so you can be better off and worse off for sure.
Right.
Everything okay? See something?
Yeah. I actually need to go check something really, really quick. I'm so sorry. Hold on one second.
No, that's all right. Brainerd and I will hang out here.
Cool. One second.
All right, so we're having a lovely conversation here with Lilith Silverkrow. You're watching the Gadfly Show. I'm your host, David Rich, and my buddy, Brainerd the Raven. Brainerd, how are you? Nice to see you.
Okay, I'm back.
And we're back.
We have officially ghosted in my house. My front door opened itself.
Oh, nice. I just got one of these.
What's that?
It's an EMF reader.
Oh, I was like, it looks like a taser from here because my screen is so small.
Taser? No. It's an EMF reader. Do you have one?
That's pretty sweet. I do not. I don't need one.
Oh, well, I do. I'm not. I don't claim to be psychic or anything like that. I claim to be. I'm more of a sage scholar than I am anything like that. Anything else? But it still works for me. So that's very cool. Okay, yeah, you don't need one. That's great. I haven't had any hits yet. So.
Well, you got.
I don't even know what I'm looking for, to be honest with you. I need to do some research. Anyway,
did you read the user manual yet?
Well, it doesn't say how to find a ghost. It just says how to, put it next to your microwave, put it next to your TV. That's all. It's not marketed as a spirit reader. Even though I read an article by a scientist that talked about these things, and he said in the article, like, he was saying he doesn't think that the EMF readers actually read that. He's like, but if you were to read a ghost, pick up on a ghost's energy, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
And he was a scientist. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Anyway, so why don't we talk about NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming? What is it? What made you so attracted to it, and where are you at with it now?
Oh my goodness. So NLP is so close to my heart because I believe that spirituality, because I'm a spiritual soul coach naturally, and then I became really versed in NLP over the years. I kept reading about it and looking at it. I'm like, I love this principle because it's about really like mental mastery to me. So I believe that what I teach now and what I help my clients with is spirituality meets mental mastery. So you got your mind, body, and spirit all wrapped in one. So if we can change the subconscious thoughts, we can also change the energy, uplifting your energy and changing, who you are ultimately so that you can be the most true, authentic expression of yourself. So neuro-linguistic programming, I have all of my notes here. Neuro-linguistic programming, I just want to make sure that I hit all of it. So neuro actually really deals with, obviously our brain and our nervous system, right? And so basically it is about the experiences, like how we experience the world through actually our senses. This is why I like to teach. This is why I love to teach psychic mediumship using NLP, because it is very close about how we see our internal representations, which could be like through visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. So that's literally all the senses. It's like that's what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you feel. It's the same thing.
Okay.
And then we have linguistic, which is the language in which we speak that actually define what our experiences are based on our internal representations, right? So it's how we describe our pictures and our sounds, and it's how we represent those things through how we communicate to each other. And then the programming is basically, they're patterns that we run. And this is the most important thing to me, is that the patterns that we run are always the same. So we talk about strategies and things like that in NLP. Everybody has a strategy for buying something. And no matter if you're buying a pen or a car or a house or a yacht, you have the same exact buying strategy every single time. So that would be a description of your face. The description of your face made me laugh.
That's okay. Makes a lot of people laugh.
Yeah. So that's not what I meant. But
I know.
Basically, what that means is that these are programs. These are programs that we run every time we have an emotion or a feeling or make a decision. So with
Okay.
neurolinguistic programming, we change the way those programs run, so to speak, so that we can live our lives optimally. So mixing this with spirituality is so powerful because there's a lot of people who have a hard time changing their mindset. And you've got mindset coaches. I love mindset coaches. I'm not going to say I think they're beautiful because they help you to change your patterns and your thoughts and the way that your mind works. Well, with NLP, changing your mindset is almost a no-brainer at that point, because the idea is to change the strategies that may not be working for you so that you have a better strategy in life.
Very cool. I'm very curious about this, and I want to learn more about it. I know that just having studied philosophy and some linguistics, that like deep philosophical contemplation, which is not the same thing as just like sitting on the floor and meditating. Meditating is like clearing your mind. Contemplation is like focusing on a single subject or a topic, right? I know that if you can get to a point in the depth of that sort of a contemplation, it's almost like a mystical, magical experience, like where you get to you literally get to the experience, the form of the topic or concept you're contemplating, and it shines this magical light on you inside you, and your whole body feels it. And you can walk away from that experience different than when you were walking into the experience. It can be a life-changing experience. And I'm wondering if there's some sort of at least overlap between that sort of level of contemplation and neuro-linguistic programming, maybe just two different approaches to the same end. I don't know.
I love that. I love that whole entire concept. The great thing about neuro-linguistic program, first and foremost, I want people to understand that we tend to make sure that you are the cause for everything. We have this kind of idea, like you can either be the cause of something or the effect of something. And when we're living in effect, it means we're living in victim mode, where everything happens because blah, blah, blah. And we make all these excuses.
You did this to me. She did this to me. Blah, 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 blah,
right,
blah. I do nothing. I just sit around and get beat around by everybody.
Right.
I have no will of my own.
Successful.
Yeah, right. I can't because the world won't let me.
Successful. And, no matter how many times I try, the world pushes me down, or I can't do this or that. That's living in effect. But when you flip it and you say, I'm the cause, are you the cause for your suffering? Or are you the cause for, you have to take personal responsibility. And when I look at cause and effect, it's about taking personal responsibility first, right? Once you've taken personal responsibility, we do a little thing that I love the most about NLP is we ask you, hey, is it okay for your unconscious mind for you to get rid of whatever thing and for you to be consciously aware of it today? And the reason why we ask that is because we want a congruent yes. We want to know that you're actually physically willing to change and take responsibility for those maybe negative emotions that you have, or maybe those limiting decisions or beliefs that you have, right? Because NLP focuses on the resources, the personal resources, which could be equated to qualities that you have. And we use what you have, your personal resources, and we don't focus on what you don't have. We focus on what you do have and how we can make what you do have work for you so that you can overcome your fears, overcome, being stuck, being unmotivated, not being able to change your mind about something. It's a very powerful practice because we use our language. We use the way that we ask our questions to kind of confuse the subconscious mind so that your consciousness can't really answer, your subconscious will. So I have a lot of tricks that I like to use to make sure that your subconscious is awake and speaking to me. I pretty much ask questions. I need them answered immediately because the moment you stop thinking, your consciousness is not involved and your subconscious is acting for you. And that's the most important part about NLP.
Interesting. Okay, very cool.
It's about activating that subconscious mind and getting you consciously aware of the things that you are changing subconsciously.
Wait, you're conscious aware of the things you're changing subconsciously. Okay, and is there a set of methods by which you go about this, or is there one method?
Oh, there's several methods. So you asked me earlier about my involvement with NLP. I'm an NLP practitioner. Next year in March, I'm going to LA to be a master practitioner, so I'm really excited about that. And then I'll be going to the training to train other people in NLP. I'll be teaching that later on next year. So there are set of different practices and the way that we do things. Like we have things called like maybe we do submodality changes, and submodalities are basically visions of our internal representations. And when I say internal representations, is how we see things. There is one particular submodality shift that we use, and this is called the single belief change. And I can actually make you like dislike something that you like too much in a very short period of time. So like we had, I remember practicing in class, and my very first experience of this was specifically 5 gum, like that 5 gum, you know, it has the 5 on it.
Yeah.
I would chew like 10 pieces a day because I would just be nervous and just like chewing this gum. And I remember, and I remember my partner said, she was like, what would you like to get rid of? I was like, well, I can't think of anything as I'm chewing this gum. And she goes, well, how about we get rid of that gum? And so what we did is we did a like to dislike pattern. And basically she asked you, what is something that's very similar that you actually dislike? And mine, for instance, would be, do you remember the zebra stripe bubble gum?
Yeah, the one that it tasted good for about 5 seconds.
Oh my God, that gum just like, it gives me an aftertaste. I don't like the way it tastes.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's good. Like, it's good for 5 seconds, and then it sucks.
It was never good to me, not even for 5 seconds.
Oh, wow, okay.
I never liked it. And so when I thought, it was like, oh, that's so disgusting, right? And so we did the like to dislike pattern. So basically what we do is we get a picture of something. So the thing that I liked the most was the 5 gum. So you get a picture of it, and then we ask what's in the picture. Is it near or far? Is it bright or dim? And then we go through a list of different things, the way that you see it in your mind. And then we ask, you know, are there any sounds important? Are there any feelings important? And my feelings were like, it tastes delicious and it helps me to like calm down. And then where's that feeling in your body? And what's the shape of that feeling in your body, that kinesthetic feeling? And then after that, she goes, okay, great. Go ahead and wipe your screen. And then we go down the list of that horrible gum that I don't like so much. So we go down the list of how I see that gum. And I'm like, ooh, I just remember the aftertaste. I have the aftertaste in my mouth. She goes, great, clear your screen. We go back to that first thing, so that 5 gum that I like. And what she does is she changes how I see that 5 gum. Like there's a whole list. How I see that 5 gum, she changes it into how I see and how I taste
zebra gum.
The zebra gum. And as soon as she's done, I had a nasty taste in my mouth. And it was the most disgusting taste. And I had the gum in my mouth. I was like, oh my God, I have to spit this out. I've not bought another pack of 5 gum. I mean, I do have addictions to other gum now, but I've not bought another pack of.
It was a lateral move.
Well, it was on purpose. It was on purpose. I wanted her to prove to me, because I've been eating 5 gum forever. I was like, you can't make me dislike this. I didn't believe that. But the thought of buying it gives me the taste of the zebra gum.
Interesting. No, that's really cool. So that sounds kind of like hypnosis. So let's talk about that, because aren't you certified in that as well?
I am.
So what's the difference there?
So hypnosis is about suggestibility. So after I always believe that hypnosis works depending on how the hypnotist feels about it. Because if a hypnotist feels like they're not going to succeed, they're not going to succeed. So what we have to do is we have to be in that state, and we have to be willing to guide the person using whatever it is that they tell us that they want in order to speak to the subconscious mind. So obviously I put people under. It's not, sitting with a pendulum like people think it is. No, we don't sit with a pendulum in front of your eyes and say, you're getting very sleepy. Hypnosis, it's so silly. Hypnosis, you are in perfect control at all times. And the most control you can have is to allow your subconscious to come forward so that we can give it the suggestions that you want to give it. After that, it's up to you to change, right? And obviously, there's work that we keep whatever change that we put forward in place. Like, for instance, EFT tapping, the emotional freedom technique. We might give you a series of tapping techniques to keep whatever it is that you want on the forefront. So you're focusing on that. If you're losing weight, maybe, you tap to ensure that you're still dieting the right way, or maybe eating the correct foods, or drinking more water, or maybe not smoking anymore, things like that. We tap for those things. And then we also can anchor states. So there's a lot of anchoring involved, which is also an NLP practice. When you anchor a state, we basically anchor somewhere on the body to either bring up a state or collapse a state that's not working for you. We don't have bad states, we just have unresourceful ones. And when people are being unresourceful, we need to change that unresourceful pattern into a resourceful one. Yeah, so basically we can do anchoring collapse. That's another NLP technique. Then we have time techniques, which is my favorite.
Yeah, okay.
Ever.
I want to hear this.
Oh my God, time techniques are my absolute favorite because I can mix a lot of spirituality with that. So basically what we do is we elicit your timeline, which your subconscious will know which direction is your future and which direction is your past. From there, we allow you to float above your timeline and go back into the very first instance where you actually experienced a negative emotion. So we usually do like maintenance on the timeline. So we'll do the first 5 negative emotions, which is anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. Once those are gone, all 5 of those. So anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt in that order. And we tend to do that as a maintenance, right? So basically what we do is we go back into the very first memory, which could also be generational or past life. It could be in the womb, right? It could even be in the womb. So you're actually going back to that actual time when it happened. You don't necessarily need to see it, but your subconscious will know you're there. So we kind of put you through some conversational hypnosis to get you to go back into that time where the first event, the first gestalt on your timeline happened of whether it's anger, sadness, fear, or guilt. And this also happens with limiting decisions or beliefs that you might have. We can also go into your future and implant goals that actually physically come true. Yeah, it's very powerful things. And what I like to do sometimes, especially with my more spiritual clients, because I have clients who are not completely spiritual and I have ones who are very spiritual, I like to mix, like, let's say you go back into a time, you bring back a lesson, your subconscious will have a lesson for you looking over that time, over that event. And once you collect what we call the learnings from that event, we ask you, is the anger there or is it gone now? Is the emotion there or is it gone now? And the reason why we ask you that is because if it's still there, we have a moment to either go back further and find the original one, because sometimes our consciousness will be like, it happened after birth when I was 2 years old, when it really happened 2 generations in a past life, right? So sometimes we have the opportunity to go back further. But what I like to do with my spiritual clients is if they see an event and they really can't get over or find the learning from it, I have them send beautiful white light energy into it, and I might send them Reiki as well to help them clear out that emotion. And then they will take that learning with them over their timeline and completely just kind of let go of whatever anger. And it's almost like once you come out of it, we future pace it and test it to see, well, if that happened in the future, how would you react, and how is that emotion different? And people end up saying things they didn't think they would ever say, like, instead of being angry, maybe I'll be more patient or something like that. And they just feel it. And then, a week later, I get phone calls like, you know what, my kids didn't irritate me and I didn't feel angry at all. And it was the weirdest feeling not having that anger there. And I said, well, the anger, it's not like it's completely gone, but you have a new starting point with a new lesson that jumpstarts you in a new direction and a new pattern. So if you happen to get angry again, you're going to be thinking about that thing you learned and brought back into the future with you because you've already healed that past situation. So timeline techniques are powerful.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah, I can get someone to completely and totally not be fearful of an event. Like people get anxiety and fear of events. Well, we make you take your timeline and you go 15 minutes out into the future after the successful completion of that event, and you bring that emotion back with you. And it takes away all of the anxiety possible.
Can you have somebody overcome their fear of death?
I haven't tried that yet. But I'm
that's the biggie. That's the big one.
I can change probably their belief around death, so doing more like a submodality change where we would probably do a single belief around that. But we would be really careful and word it properly and check for ecology to make sure that, like, oh, if you change your opinion on death, like, what does that really mean? Are you going to turn into a daredevil? Are you going to see yourself jumping off a mountain and bungee jumping? Like, if that's okay with you, then that's fine. But, you know, we want to make sure whatever it is that we're changing is 100% ecological, built on ecology and built on ethics itself.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, I was involved in a certain organization back in the 90s. I won't say what it is right now, but there was a ritual that we would do, that some of us would do. I didn't actually do it. I just heard about the effects of it from other members. And it was a ritual, a psychodrama that within it's called the ritual chamber, you would mimic your own death. You wouldn't cut yourself, or it was just all psychological, blah, blah, blah. And people would walk out of that ritual chamber completely changed, with absolutely no fear of death whatsoever. At least for a short term. I don't know. I haven't checked back on them since, the 90s. Maybe it faded away, but it was an extremely powerful thing. And it always made me, like, death is supposed to be like the biggest fear anybody can have, is dying, right? Because we just don't, most people don't, they have faith, they have ideas, stuff like that, but nobody has any, we don't know firsthand exactly what happens. So we sort of fear it. And I always thought that it would be a much more interesting world if people could overcome their fear of death. First of all, they wouldn't put up with as much nonsense from people who like bully them around and stuff like that, because they wouldn't have any fear of anything. So I was just curious if you ever dealt with, like, somebody came in and said, okay, help me overcome my fear of death. And so I even had, like, for a long time in my life, I had a very explicit, outwardly fear of death. Like, it was a massive preoccupation of mine for a long time. And then I trained myself out of it. And now, as far as I can tell, unless I'm just deluding myself, I have very, very little fear of death. I'm not looking forward to the process of dying, but the actual death part, that's fine.
Honestly, I think that my vision of what death is changed considerably practicing witchcraft, and then considerably being able to speak to the dead changed my whole perspective of death completely. Death is not the end. Death is not really.
It is not the end, and that's the reassuring part. And this again goes back for me, the deep philosophical contemplation that changes the way you walk through the world and view the world. And mine concerning death is that there's just no way I can't see how death, your consciousness just stops as when your body stops. They're not the same thing, first of all. So one lives on past the other. Anyway, we only got a couple minutes left here. What else on your long list of accomplishments did you want to talk about? Am I missing anything?
I think we got pretty much everything. I am an NLP practitioner. I'm a time techniques practitioner, which is a separate certification. I'm a life and success coach as well as a spiritual coach. I am a witch. I teach psychic mediumship. I do EFT tapping. I do all sorts of healing modalities.
You do ESP what? What's ESP what?
EFT tapping.
Oh.
EFT. Yeah, emotional freedom technique. Yeah. So I do EFT tapping. I do pretty much everything. All of my clients love me so much because they come to me with a specific goal, and we get super focused, laser focused on that goal, and we make it happen for them.
Nice.
And I've not failed with the skills that I had. It's been the most amazing transformations I've ever seen in my life. From someone who was completely camera shy to doing lives almost every day, to someone who was afraid to start their own business, to actually doing their own business, actively getting clients and doing wonderfully. It's just to see people transform and change. And I use everything I know. I don't just stick to one thing. I use everything that I know to help change occur. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that I've ever done in my whole entire life is to watch people change. And it just makes me feel like a proud mama when I see my clients. Yeah, when my clients graduate and they're just like, thank you so much. I turned, watching someone who had absolutely no psychic ability turn into a full-fledged psychic, like watching these things happen in front of my eyes, it just gives me the most joy I've ever had in my life.
That's so cool. That's great. Well, good for you. And thank you for what you do, because it's very important. Like I said, all this stuff is more up and coming, becoming more and more popular. And so it's nice to have people that are already established in it in order to help the other ones that are just newly getting to it, to help them on their way. Because that's really important. I think we just are talking about a little bit I know about astrology is that a handful of years ago, we entered into the age of Aquarius. I know that.
Right.
So this is a sure. I think this is a sure sign of that. We're leaving the age of Pisces, which is the Christian age, the fish, right, into the age of Aquarius, which is going to be more about mysticism and magic. 100% it is. That's what it's defined as. So this is all really good stuff. All right.
Right.
Lilith Silverkrow, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Thank you.
Yes, I always have fun with you. We're going to have you on again because there's more to talk about. We barely even touched on tarot cards.
I know. We need to talk more about it for sure.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the second episode of The Gadfly with your host, David Rich and Brainerd the Raven. Till next time, let truth be your guide, and I'll see you soon. Take care.